Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris were back in campaigning in the battleground states Thursday. Harris spent her day in the Southwest campaigning in Arizona and Nevada. She's continuing her recent media blitz with a Univision town hall. Meanwhile, Trump traveled to Michigan. He spoke at the Detroit Economic Club, laying out his agenda.
Instead of American workers worrying about losing their jobs to foreign nations, I want foreign nations to be worried about losing their jobs to America. That's going to happen. Going to happen. Going to happen. And I hope the Democrats will go along with us, but we'll get it done one way or the other.
All right. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa joins me now. Bob, I know you're in Pittsburgh. Because that is where former President Barack Obama is campaigning for Kamala Harris. Talk to us about how the campaign is utilizing Obama's presence and why having him campaign for her right now, of course, is so important.
Jerika, great to be with you. Former President Barack Obama will be on stage here in Western Pennsylvania in a field house at the University of Pittsburgh in just over an hour. And this is an important event for the Democrats as they try to win Pennsylvania and try to win the White House. Pennsylvania is seen as a crucial part of the electoral calculation for the Democrats, and they know that former President Trump has done well here in 2016 and 2020, especially in the Pittsburgh area, in the exurban and rural counties around Pittsburgh. So what the Obama appearance is about driving turnout among some of those core Democratic coalitions, college students here at the University of Pittsburgh, black voters, white voters here in the city of Pittsburgh, along with Latino voters, that urban area of Western Pennsylvania. And they also want labor to come out. There are a lot of steel towns that have struggled in this region, and they know that Obama has built his has had his arm in arm with labor over the past few decades and tried to have his own coalition with labor. And there is a concern privately among some Democrats that Vice President Harris, her support among some union members, could be a little bit soft. So this visit is about reviving the Obama coalition from the past and trying to get some political electricity around Vice President Harris.
Bob, I want to switch gears and talk about Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis there is accusing Kamala Harris of playing a political game with the hurricane disaster response. He said that she never called or came to visit after any other hurricanes in the last 3.5 years. First of all, can you clear up for us? Do we know if this accusation is correct? And how is Vice President Harris responding?
You saw the response from the White House today that President Biden is fully engaged in disaster response, he says, and he's working with the governors. Vice President Harris and her team say she is fully engaged as well. There has been always a political tension between Governor Ron DeSantis and this White House over the past 3.5 years, so that tension simmering again is no surprise. But you do see the politics of disaster relief. It's a loaded question in Washington as Congress and the White House grapple with how to move forward. Should there be a relief package now or not? The president calling on Congress to come back to session. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, trying to wait a little bit to figure out what exactly the scope of disaster relief might be necessary from Congress. And this is something we've seen before in American politics. Think back to Superstorm Sandy in 2012 and the closing days of that presidential election. It charged the entire political conversation in the country about whether relief should be sent to New Jersey, the scope of that relief. So we're seeing that kind of political dynamic play out again here with this standoff, in a sense, between the governor of Florida and the administration.
Yeah, we've even seen President Biden sort of attacking Donald Trump in the past couple of days for the misinformation that's being spread with this hurricane. I guess the question really is, what more can the former president say at this point when it comes to trying to focus on the people as opposed to the politics?
Jerika, it's a great question. So much of this campaign, when I'm talking to voters here in Western Pennsylvania or around the country, comes back to economic pain. And some of that economic pain is really being felt in this country right now by residents of Florida, residents of Western North Carolina, other parts of the South that have been hit hard by these storms, by these hurricanes in recent weeks. And that's part of the economic question that's facing so many voters. Do they have the money to repair their homes? Do they have the money to put food on the table? Whether their lives are affected by a storm or not. In both of these campaigns, whether it's Trump at the Economic Club in Detroit today, President Obama, the former president here in Pittsburgh today, the main contenders out on the field across the country. They're all trying to come back to that question of who's fighting for you and providing voters with an answer that Democrats and Republicans are doing just that.
All right, Robert Costa with a great segue because we have more to talk about with the economy in Pittsburgh for us. Thank you, Robert.